Hey everyone, Ben here. Welcome to another episode of the Stellar Work podcast. This time I'm having Markus Andrezak with me. Markus is one of the product management experts here in Germany with an impressive track record at mobile.de as well as his advisory work. I've met a survey on LinkedIn a while ago and you guys seem to be very interested in product management and product strategy. So if you're a follower and participate in a survey, or if you're just generally interested in the topic, this episode is for you. Welcome to the show, Markus.
Hey, Benjamin, how are you?
Very good, very good. How are you?
Yeah, all fine. One of the few days of traveling for me. I'm not used to traveling anymore, but this time you hit me on a journey.
Yeah, where are you?
Actually, I think close to or in your hometown. It's Nuremberg.
Yeah,
today.
that is very close. We should have recorded in person, but unfortunately, next time maybe. Well, I wanted to reach out to you to talk a little bit about product management and strategy. I did a survey on LinkedIn a couple of months ago asking the audience what was the most interesting topic that I should do more episodes about. And people voted for product management and strategy. So I thought, why not reach out to you?
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of turmoil, I guess, at least in product management last year. So I guess that's a little bit of what influenced the survey. I think strategy actually is a little bit of a quiet topic. Like it's still a really niche topic. So if you ever reach out back to your audience, I would be interested, like what's the questions on strategy that they're having?
Yeah. So when you're listening to this, maybe open up your LinkedIn app and write in the comments what type of questions you want to hear. And I'm scheduling a second call with you to go and cover all the strategy related questions out there. But before we do that, we have the habit on the show that the guest introduces himself, herself to our audience. And then we dig into what you did in the past and what we could take away for the future.
Yeah, so I'm Markus. I started off already when I was late in my career as a software developer. By chance, I was at a university institute, which first of all took care about all the stuff that is AI now. And what we try to do is get computers arrange calendar dates, which was from the algorithm side very much solvable, but the computing power didn't exist. So one of those days, our professor discovered the internet. So that was beginning of the 90s or something. And he was like, that internet kind of thing is a funny thing. So why don't we do some research on that? And we did some research on that. We did really stupid stuff like, the stuff that this ominous thing that's called link. What is it like semantically? And, because it is kind of a strange thing because you hit a link and then something happens and you don't actually really know what happens. And as the internet was really new, we did some research on how can we prevent people from hitting something which they don't know what it causes. So we started an annotation system for links that was open source and public and everything. So people could say like, I was here already and this and that would happen if you hit that link. So it didn't scale, of course. Then one of those days, there was a Chinese guy sitting in our room and he was like, yeah, search engines are coming up, but none of them have any Chinese documents. And we just like that built a Chinese search engine. And then after maybe half a year that he was confident with that search engine, we had the brilliant idea to do it in German, Brainiac. And that was a Fireball then later at the time. So we built Fireball at the time. I think it was amongst the 5 biggest internet sites in Germany or Europe at the time. I don't remember anymore.
That is a very much rocket internet approach to do stuff, right?
No, it was the opposite. No.
It was the opposite?
Yeah, because rocket, like, you had to do a lot with the Zambas on the side because, like, at the same time, they built this eBay knockoff when we built the search engine and they wanted us to build the knockoff, but we didn't want to. And, we didn't want to deal with them that much and all that. But they always knew they go for product. And we were stupid enough to go for time, material, and service. So we were stupid by just selling the technology to Gruner and Jahr and all these guys and just sell the work while others get rich. The Sambas were already figuring out the business model behind all these things and had more trust and money in the background. For us, it was like when we got the first 7-figure check, it was like, oh my God, what is this? And the Sambas would laugh about stuff like this, I guess. Yeah, anyways, I thought that was a chance that we got this done somehow. So I said like, I want to learn how real people do this. And then I went into big consultancy to learn how real people would do it. Stuck there for, I think, 5 years or something. I can't remember. And then eBay called and I moved to Potsdam. And then eBay is really close to Potsdam. So that's fate calling. And I went to eBay and the part I was working there was mobile. That's also where we have a little bit of connection because you are working in a company that helped me in the agile transformation at the time. So one of your founders, Stefan, was my coach at the time, and it was an adventurous time, including traveling to Kiev and all that stuff, like lots of adventures. And all the time, there was always this kind of agile or non-agile background swirling around, because when Kent Beck published his first book, Extreme Programming Explained, it was revelation time for us. And we're like, oh my God. And the question was, because we were selling these services, like, how do you explain your customer that two guys in front of a keyboard is a good thing for the customer as well? And we got it done somehow. And we followed some principles. Already when we did this time materials stuff work, we always insisted on meeting the client on Mondays and then work the rest of the week for ourselves at least, or if he would be around, that would be fine. But we always insisted on having the customer around for a day in the week. Anyways, long story short, eBay was actually a really cool company in a way that the part in which I worked, Mobile, was strategically so clear that we could afford a lot of experiments, also because the business model is kind of, I don't know, it's just a brilliant, very clear business model, which allowed us to experiment a lot. I could do a lot of experiments in design thinking, in user research, in how to set up a product group. We had a product group which made no distinction between developers and product guys and stuff like that, which I wouldn't recommend to everybody. But we could figure and try out a million things, and that led to me one day having the idea of being smart enough to actually teach other people what I'm doing. And that led to my company that I'm having right now, Überprodukt, which is a product and strategy boutique consultancy. Really small, just me, basically. And yeah, that's what I'm doing now.
That is a fairly impressive career. And I'm wondering, you just said it very nonchalant that they had a very clear business model, and that was what made it so cool. And I'm wondering, don't every company need a very clear business model, and isn't that something that should be like a hygiene factor when running a company?
Yeah, I think, clarity you can't make up. It's not like you sit down and just like that have a clear business model. So there went a lot of work down this. So clarity is always achieved by a million of small steps. And that's what this company was really, really good at. Like, for everybody working in a company that looks a little messy, the nice words would be, I felt it a little bit messy at the time. When I was in that environment, I didn't feel it as being that clear. Just to give you some examples, and it leads a little bit to the stuff that then led to clarity. So we had very famous Thursday evening meetings, which were supposed to clarify the portfolio we're working on, all the projects we were working on. And then on Friday, nobody knew what was decided at all. But that was the one meeting where all the decisions were made. And basically at this time I was going crazy, because the people that sat in the room on Fridays then thought like, everybody knows what's going on. And if you went to all the workers, it was like, what the hell are we doing? So that was kind of where we started when I started my job there. And then, working with Stefan and Kanban coming up, like we had this funny idea that we thought like, and it was just a couple of blog posts about Kanban at the time, and we didn't meet David Anderson yet and all that stuff. He didn't ever visit Europe until that time with his Kanban stuff. And we thought, like, what if a token on a Kanban board is not a task but a project? And that led to portfolio management with Kanban, all that stuff, which then led to flight levels with Klaus and all these things. And this taught me some of the principles behind clarity, which was all people in a room every week like we had before, but with some visualization and with a very specific meeting agenda, which is only on decisions. Forget all the monitoring. You can do monitoring all the week, but it's so detailed that people always are drawn back to that level of detail. All the smallest details, you always can have an opinion. It's just instinctively you talk about these things rather than the big decisions you should make. So week by week, for months and years, going through these meetings on that portfolio level with these guys, and the whole company piece by piece understanding that this is our most important meeting and we steal that time from the company, that was led to that clarity in hindsight. And that was really cool, like, coming up with something that's used over time And still, what I discovered at the time for me that works is still behind a lot of the principles I'm following today. Like I'm totally addicted to high cadences in meetings and organizing groups, departments, whole companies around cadences of meetings and all that stuff, because I think that it's really close to all the habit stuff that you can read about. And habits is what makes people strong behind everything which takes a long time, because it's so hard to stick to something for a long time. It's just so friggin' hard. Like there's two things which are really hard. One is getting started, and the other one is sticking to it. The rest is easy peasy.
I'm wondering a little from your experience at Mobile and from your work as a consultant or coach regarding product management strategy. I'm wondering, why don't we see companies like Mobility emerging nowadays? So we had this phase with Rocket Internet, with all the different companies coming up. We had the Mobility, we had all of that emerging out of the internet cowboy phase, so to say. Why don't we see tech companies like that in Germany or Europe emerging at the same pace as back then?
I think I need to watch my mouth a little bit with this. So first of all, is at the time we all were lucky in a way. Like, until 2000, it was that cowboy time, and a lot of people went broke after 2000, and at least after 9/11, and when everything non-critical was just stopped, also in the bigger companies that had a huge turnover, which is also why old guys like me are not that terrified right now, because that's kind of the second or third downturn of the economy for us. It's like, yeah, we know it goes up and down. But in the beginning, of course, you could just get lucky. And if you were at the right place at the right time, you didn't have to be Einstein to make it. You just had to be there, and a lot of luck was involved. Since then, I think we learned a lot of the stuff that really makes structure, what I just talked about, cadences, how can strategy work. The role of the product manager when I started nearly didn't exist. It existed in hardware companies, but what is a software, digital, whatever product manager? We didn't have the structure at the time. And when Roman was coming up in the Scrum world as product management, it was still, the dark side and all that stuff. And what was the difference between that and a project manager, these assholes and all that? All of that was really pretty unclear. So at the time it was luck. After that, you could live with structure. What I'm seeing today is a lot of people are driven by, monetary incentives. They just want to get rich. They want to hack the world. They want to hack the environment. And that's not how it works. Like, and that basically divides the world into at least three parts. Like, one part is these people who just give it a try and hack along and see where they come and are totally self-confident and think their idea is just great. Then you have people who are more theorizing and visionary and whatever. And then you have execution guys. That's the three people. And, the problem is you need to have all of these three types of people in a company, in an environment, or you have to think these three directions at least. You have to think deeply about the structure that you need. You need to think deeply about what you want to achieve in the world. You need to think about what the outside world is doing and what it means to you. And you have to derive options from that. And you have to understand that you need to be stable on your long-term vision, but you need to be really flexible on the options. You need to be able to drive that in organizational culture where you know who's responsible for what. Like when the visionary people are going into operations and disrupt people doing their work, it's always nightmare. And there's so much smartness behind all of that, and so much which goes against human instincts and being driven on all of that. And so I think that the combination and the wisdom that is required to set all of this up with that right level of ambition and patience and resilience, that's just friggin' hard. Otherwise, it would be easy. I think it's really that unique combination that is required for building up something really great. For me, like I myself couldn't do anything like it. I'm not good enough in delegating. That's why I'm a one-man company. Otherwise, I would be in a 10,000 people company or anything. I'm totally lacking that level of maybe daredevilishness. Like I dare a lot of stuff, but just for me, I wouldn't ever want to be responsible for that stuff for a huge crowd of people. I would also always, when it scales, be more the person of restraint, but then you need to have that counterpart that is really going for it. And, and then you have to have constant friction. And the best companies I saw, or also at Spotify and these places, these people are in constant fight and friction and always debating stuff like crazy, and they might scream at each other. And that's also who you need to be. You need to be able to stand this, and you need to actually look for that stuff. Because that's
Is
also
it like
creating
personal
clarity.
conflicts, or is it like constructive debate?
No, I think most of the time, like if it's getting personal, you're done. It's like, I think to take an extreme example, I never met the guys, but let's take the really super extreme example of Palantir, like Peter Thiel and Alex Karp are really super different guys. I cannot imagine how they can behave in one room, but they do it. And it's all because like on this organizational matter and what they want to achieve with Palantir, they seem to be in line. And I hope you don't have to cut it, because Palantir is really a strange company, and it's not the most politically correct company to talk about probably. But I think there's lots of stuff to learn from these guys, what they're doing. And what you see there is really that extreme mix of personalities, different directions philosophically, but they know what they want from each other, and that's what's driving them forward. It seems like that they just blend all the political stuff out somehow.
It also seems like you would need different types of personalities in different phases of building the company.
Totally. And for example, like if you start a startup and you're full of specialists, have fun. So in the beginning, of course, you need more generalists, and like the social appeal needs to be, I'm happy to jump into the void that just exists. Whatever the job is, I'm going to do it, and I don't care. And people who are driven away by role descriptions, while later on, when you're scaling, if everybody has to jump in all the voids that are created, nobody has a role description, you just create chaos. And being aware of that, and being aware that also as a founder, your job is changing from, I have an idea, to I actually create a company and I only take care about organization or the direction later on even, and my job gets more and more abstract and my ideas don't count anymore at all. It's other people who create the ideas and options and all of that. Like that's of course an important
I'm wondering,
journey.
You mentioned product managers and the role of product management that came into the agile world, which was first of all considered a little bit weird. I wonder what's your take on that is, because if you look at different contexts, let's say different stages of that company would go through, like you're a startup, you're like a mid-sized but growing company, and then you're an established big player. I assume you would need like different role descriptions, different types of product managers. So I'm wondering, like, what is product management in its essence, if it's so dependent on the context?
Yeah, I think it's a terrific question, especially because I'm also always asking myself the same question every day, basically. Like, and I think what is the overarching answer to all situations, I think, is that you have to imagine yourself as a product manager as being the person who's orchestrating all these strange disciplines that you need to work on one product. I don't know. You need the data guys. You need the designers like crazy, because they have the wisdom of finding out what the customer needs, how it translates to emotions, how it relates to customer journeys, to experiences and all that stuff. You need the first thing that I would outsource to a different person is project management, because I hate it. I don't want to be organized. I just want, it's stuff I don't want to care about. You need to have that business sense, and you need to be close to a CFO, a financial person. You need to dig into all the financial data. You need to take care actually about bundling and all that stuff, and you have to have all this knowledge in your head, which in the end, I think when you're that orchestrating guy, I think what you need to do is you need to look around and see, like, what are the capabilities in the company? Where can I delegate? And whatever you can delegate and make it a team effort. So the whole idea of that, omnipotential product guy who knows all, decides all, has all the insight, I never saw it. I think if it exists, it's a dying breed, because you can't breed these people like crazy. Also, I think no person is ever smart enough to be right in all these areas, even if a person would be knowledgeable about it. Also, these people need that friction. So having a team around you debating all these disciplines and areas and then condense it into the one thing that you ship to the world. I think that's the core. And that's what makes it so hard to describe the role, because yes, overarching it is that orchestration role. But what you can outsource to other people, what you can delegate to other people is totally different from company to company, environment to environment, phase of the company and all of that stuff. And sometimes you're the poor bastard who needs to do it all because none of these people are around you and you have to do all of that. And, one of the talks I'm giving is the one about Roland Pichler's wheel of, all the stuff that product manager. And it's just baffling how a person should be able to do that. And it goes, it's... In the Middle Ages, it was the architect who was supposed to be, good in mathematics, physics, and all of that. And, nobody could do it. They needed help, of course. I remember that in the 80s, it was like, rational unified process, like later on bought by IBM. There was
minus 20 subscriptions to the podcast right now.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Everybody hates it. And it was stupid because, it was basically it was the save of the time, I think. But it also baked one crucial role, which was the object-oriented designer or architect. So everything in the process relied that you have a very smart person like that, which knows everything and is versed in all the disciplines. Well, we know what happened. Basically, the whole approach died because of that role they designed. And my promise to product is if you keep piling up all these responsibilities in one role, in one person, it will die out. And I think the reaction we see from the US and so on, Brian Chesky, the discussion is that he was disappointed in that miracle role of the product manager that's going to save the world for him. And then he hired them. He's like, oh my God, they cannot save me. And now he, in the next extreme direction of the pendulum, is trying to get rid of them, and the rest is history. So we need to always take care of it. And what's really important for me in that role is don't be a dick. The role is so prominent, and the role seems to be attractive to a lot of people that are looking for a lot of power. So if you get the role and if you get the power, be a nice guy. There's so many knowledgeable people in the company around you, work with them.
Have you ever been involved in hiring product managers?
Yeah, a ton. Yeah.
What is your go-to question, or do you have any favorite questions that you would ask in an interview to identify the right candidate for a product management role?
Yeah, actually, I'm asking more about these social skills, and I do that by asking about strange situations, like what was a really critical situation where, things were on the brink of collapsing, and what did you do and what did you have to do and how did you resolve the situation? I'm listening to if they try to, run against all the windmills for themselves, or if it was a team effort and all of that stuff. So I'm looking what in extreme situations are people doing, and does it sound natural what they're telling you? Because they might read you as well and answer the way you want it. And all that stuff. So yeah, but I always think none of that knowledge that product managers need is super hard to learn. What's hard to learn is being that nice guy who has a lot of responsibility and people play you a lot of times, but you still need to stay nice to your colleagues. Because that is one thing where I'm really having a lot of empathy with all the product managers, because you need to commit the roadmap, if you like the word or not. But you need to commit the roadmap. Somebody's going to ask you, why is it 3 months late? And I'm sorry, but the developers will always be we couldn't know. It got more complicated. And you relied on the developers all the time. I don't know. I'm sounding kind of toxic right now, but that's my real life experience. That you get all these estimates and all the stuff, and it's not reliable. It cannot be reliable. Nobody's a dick. It's nobody's fault. But you are the really single ringable neck. You need to stand in the fire. And with all that pressure, sometimes I get it that it's hard to stay that nice guy, but there's no other chance.
One thing that I'd like to ask is, could you walk me through an average day of your past product manager role? And then I will see if they are stuck in meetings back to back. They get to visit the client. They talk to potential clients. How do they interact with sales to get an impression of it? Of course, it's always the processes and the overall system they're in. But I get an idea of what they think the role is like.
And then, on the other hand, it's to, I guess, 60%, 70% the question on what was that company like where you worked. Because, And then I think what you can figure out is like, did that person ever have a chance to engage in customer contact?
Yeah, of course.
Or was
It's
it
not
kind of a desk
the
job
single
or not?
question that you would ask. Yeah, of course. Sure.
Some of those guys just don't have a chance,
Yeah. Sometimes you're just trapped. Especially when you decide to leave and apply for another company. That's probably more often the case. I would like to step up a little bit our discussion and move a little bit away from the startup-y, Brian Chesky, founder mode, product manager, and go into like the bigger corporations where you have different departments that are depending on you, like sales, strategy, and somehow you're not the single person responsible for a product, but you have like all of those different other colleagues that you need to align with that maybe know the customer better because they're spending more time with them. If they're like sales representatives, or if they work on marketing and they're on social media all the time and they get all the reviews and all the hate in the comment section about what's wrong with the product, suddenly you as a product manager seem to be in a very different position. And I'm wondering, like, if anyone is in a product manager role inside such a company, what would your advice be in order to maybe find your way of being a good product manager in that type of scenario?
So first of all, I think there's, everything that you described, there's also a lot of positive, like, how good is it that we have salespeople with all that contact? How good is it that we have a customer support team or customer success team or whatever it's called? How good is it that we have a totally different breed of people, like marketing people, who don't even think about our technical capabilities? It's just boring to them. They just pretend the product will work. And if not, it's just a hate session on Mondays, 3 o'clock p.m. and after half an hour, everything is forgotten again.
Yeah. But I think the role pretty much changes when you move from like a startup to such a...
In a way, yes. Like it's getting much more abstract. And I think what you need to be, like you need to have a lot of experience, I think, and a really cool, good product sense. You need to really breathe product from every pore, because all the side talk, all the side noise is so heavy, and everybody thinks they are in possession of the truth. Like, the sales guy goes out and he's blasted by the clients with all the same requirements all of the time. And the normal person that is not a product person thinks that if I just listen to the client and build that stuff, everything's going to fly. So the poor sales guy really thinks that if he lets that stuff being built, that the contracts will fly in. And it's just not going to happen. It's because the difference between a customer wish and a customer want and the need behind it and all that stuff. And you need to be really, really strong in deflecting all that stuff, in listening to it, but knowing that you cannot just one by one build that stuff. There needs to be that. And that's, I think, the core capability of a product manager, that he lists all that stuff, all the requirements, all the requests he hears, and does the deep work with his team, whoever that may be, that he goes from request or want and does the deep analysis, what is the need behind that? And then he builds a solution for the need. That's the point. And then he needs to be strong in communicating the story so that the sales and the marketing people say, like, now I get it. That's what we're doing. It's basically the same thing, but different. I get it. Yeah. It's coming from the back. I get it. Now it's fine. And he needs to practice also that storytelling. When he finds a thing that he's building, he needs to practice the storytelling so that the sales guys and the marketing guys and whoever and the CEO and the CFO are actually convinced that it's the right thing. But what I'm seeing a lot of times is the more crazy, the more scaled the environment gets, the more people are actually overwhelmed by that and just consort to the position of just building what they're hearing. And if you're just weak enough, you can bring yourself into the position of actually believing that if I just go through that 50-point list by customer support, just get that stuff done, it's good for the company. But it's actually what's called the product death cycle. If you build what the customer wants, you just end up in a horror product. And that's actually, I think, what makes the job hard. That you have that knowledge, maybe with the designers, that you need to have that space of deep work where you come to yourself and find out what the need behind all of that stuff is and build that one thing. Like and that you endure all the noise around you and say, like, cut the crap. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah. And any tips for anyone out there finding themselves in such a situation? Like how to cut the crap?
I honestly think, and it comes back to why a lot of people fail. I think it's a lot of education. Like, I don't find a lot of people who go back and read the books about all that stuff, the design books about what sort of work do I have to work to find the need behind the want and all that stuff. It's frigging education and experience. Go for it. Like, and if you don't find that experience at work, I get it. Like, you don't always have the chance, and people just want stuff from you. I get all of that. It needs to be a hobby. Like, that's what I did for 10 years. Like, I sat there in the evenings and did and tried stuff and experimented and exposed myself and went into crazy workshops and what have you. And I don't know, learned it the hard way. And it's always, like, life's not supposed to be easy. And often people think life's supposed to be easy and nice and, success and leverage and all that stuff. Product management is a friggin' complex, hard job with 1,000 very uncomfortable angles. So if you don't want that, don't be a product manager. It's cool. Like, you can do everything else on the planet. Product management will never be easy. Stakeholders will always be stakeholders. It's just like a movie director. Everybody has opinions on the ending of your movie. But you can only build one ending of a movie. And also, you need to be aware that there's always going to be hate. Whatever product you're building, there's always going to be hate. Actually, the better the product is, there's going to be more hate. Look at the iPhone, like probably the most successful product of all times. When it was presented, there was two camps. A couple of people really loved it and saw the vision in it, rightfully so or not, who cares?
And the people who bought the BlackBerry.
Yeah, right. And all the people who came out, all the tech reviews were just hating the thing in the beginning. It was, it looks nice and shiny, but what is it, and they just saw the voids, which it obviously had, and it had bad reception, all of that. So there was a ton of hate. And if the people would have listened to the hate and just listened to the market, what they all need, it would have just been another phone. Like, that's the thing. If you build something, it polarizes. There will be hate. Only if you build a middle-of-the-road thing that already exists, that everybody has, and it's a Me Too product, then you don't produce hate. Get used to it.
So let's say you managed to set your sails in a storm. You found your way with the product. The next thing you mentioned is you have to become a storyteller. How do you learn to become a storyteller?
It's all the same thing, like it's just practice storytelling. And, when I say storytelling, it's of course, you don't have to be able to write books. You don't have to be able to write the most beautiful blog posts or whatever. That's not the point. What you need to be able to is the stuff that you heard in your research that brought you to building that thing. Try to condense it down to a couple of sentences, say like, this is a problem, this is a situation the person is in, this is release, like, make it as a hero story, whatever. But just think of one arc of a story that builds up tension, releases tension, so that people go through that journey with you and say like, oh, no, I know what you mean. And it doesn't have to be craftful. I imagine that, like, I didn't have to try it in the last year or something. I imagine that nowadays just getting a story arc with AI would be super simple. If you feed it some core of your research, I would never use the result, but, I would always use it as a start and then refine. And then again, as always, it's once you have that first draft, rinse, repeat. My family is a sad family because, like, whenever I have to do some storytelling anywhere, I tell them all the stories, like, my daughter's getting mad at me. I don't care. The dashboard of my car is getting mad at me because I tell all the stories to my dashboard all the time. It's just repetition, It's how you prepare a good talk. You don't do it by just, preparing it in a slide deck. It's by repeating it until you
so
don't
you also have to
care
find
about
like your dojo where you can just splash out your stories to totally hear yourself. Maybe
nothing is anything without repetition. Repetition is, all the stupid virtues that people talk about, always showing up, always being there, repetition like crazy. It helps.
I assume it pretty much also asks for putting your ego to the side, because that's not like one story. Once you told it, you settle with it, and then you're set on rails. I assume that you would learn along the way. You would see what works for clients, what doesn't work, what's better at the market. Maybe you see your competitor doing something interesting and you want to react on that. So you would have to find another narrative, but that would include like putting your ego to the side and admitting, hey, I've learned something new. Here is what we do from now on.
Absolutely. And I think you're making a great point with putting the ego aside. I think that is so core to the whole job. Not just that job, a lot of jobs, but in that job in particular, I think it's super important. For example, I had, if there is ever any such thing, I had a certain breakthrough when I was engaging more with D-School from HPI in Potsdam on design thinking. And it's not that much about design thinking, but the experience I went through with those people. And at the time, we wanted to solve a certain business problem, and it had to do with craftsmen. And the stuff we did together was like, I was taking a bath in that customer environment. Like after a couple of days, I could, from 100 meters away, I could differentiate a person if that craftsman is working for private people or if the person is going for public contracts. One of those people looked totally unhealthy and, I don't know, burned out and anything. And the other one looked more like closer to artists. When I went through the streets before that session, I had no clue. But then it was like, oh my God, there's these two types, and then you can differentiate more and more. And the business problem we had to deal with at the time was like, what are craftsmen looking for when they advertise themselves? What helps them? Because we had one business concept that didn't work for them, and like I had to come up with one that works. And the breakthrough came actually in the evening while drinking with them. And I don't drink alcohol, so I exposed myself to drinking with those guys. And, I asked them like, yeah, how do you do acquisition? And they're like, what? Like acquisition. And I don't want to paint them as stupid, but that was not a word they used. How do you get customers? Yeah, we get called. But seriously, a good craftsman is just getting called, because people recommend them, and so they don't care about exposing themselves that much and all that. That's why you don't get hold of a good craftsman.
But like,
and all that
how do you get called? People would recommend you. How do you get recommended? By doing great work. How do you do great work? And then you get to a point where you have a lever on a certain thing.
Yeah, and here's the surprise. So the platform I was working for at the time, they had 35% churn, and bad craftsmen went broke, so they are part of the natural churn of the platform. And here's the thing, like what the platform did, they were asking, so they had the end clients asking the craftsmen for quotes, and the good craftsmen would never answer, because why would they? So the only answers an end client would get is from crappy craftsmen, because they don't have a job. So basically the whole business concept just defines decline for that platform, decline into non-quality. So how do you turn that around? Anyway, so I don't talk about the solution that much, but why I come to that point is because like I had to be absolutely nobody. I had to know absolutely nothing. I had to get rid of all my preconceptions of what a craftsman is, how they work, what defines work, what acquisition is, what my words, my life is. Like, it doesn't mean a thing. And that's the humbling part. Like, you're just sitting there, sucking up all these signals, then try to sit back, have that neutral stance, and what does it all mean? That's why that word of sense making in design thinking, and we don't have to talk about design thinking, but why it's so great. Because you just need to make sense of all that stuff. Which means you don't play a role.
I'm looking at the clock a little bit, and we also promised to talk about strategy. So maybe let's shift from where we are now, and let me ask you a little bit about strategy and how it relates to product management. Because often what I see is that there's like a different role beside the product manager responsible for the overall strategy.
Well, yes, you might be a product manager, and then you might be responsible at least for a product strategy. Cool thing. So that would be one of those nested levels of strategy that exist: branding strategy, marketing strategy, tech strategy, company strategy. And that's also where kind of the illusion starts and stops at the same time, that a product manager would be I don't know, autonomous in any of these things. Like, of course, there's a company strategy and your product needs to blend into it. It needs to work in collaboration with marketing, sales, tech, all that stuff. So hopefully there is an overarching strategy. Otherwise, nothing makes sense.
So you mean on a business level?
Yeah. Hopefully the company knows what they want to be doing, how they differentiate, what their identity is, what they want to be in the world, what the impact should be they have in the world, and all of that stuff. But that's just one level, and having that level is super critical, because if you don't have that level of clarity and long-term stability, every change you're making, and you will need to have to do a lot of changes, every change will just look arbitrary to people, and people just feel like fooled, and that can have two situations. One is a positive one. You get new work in a company and just like it, and you have success. The other one is your project is stopped because it strategically makes no sense anymore. And this is actually where you need to be skilled in strategy to explain to people why it doesn't make sense anymore. Here's the data, here's what we wanted to achieve, here's the identity part, the marker, how I call it, that wanted to pay into. It doesn't. So we need to stop this. Yeah, but maybe it's just the implementation. No, we tried 3 implementation approaches, it doesn't work. This is the moment where we invest in something else. It's fine, it's cool, it's not your fault. It was an experiment we all went into, it's totally cool. And in all of that, you need to do these explanations coming from the top, from who are we, what do we want to achieve, into what I call options. It's what are things, tools we could use to go into that direction or deepen that direction. And these are more temporary, and you need to decide on them, commit on them, and all of that. But that's the level of flexibility also that you have. So if it doesn't work out after half a year or a year, skip it, get rid of it. And what I always say is that the maturity of a company, an organization, is defined by the level they are smart on getting rid of options, choosing new options, bringing new options into the world, which is one of the hardest parts, like when creativity comes in. What are you doing when all the options you see are just worthless? What are you doing now? And that's when it's getting about, being excellent and all that stuff, and working with all the external signals and what have you.
And something that you mentioned is helpful when working with strategy is using markers, but we didn't cover what markers actually are. So maybe...
Yeah. So I came up with that little makeshift strategy framework because, strategy has a problem in that it's hugely over and undefined at the same time. So a vision means 10 things to 10 people, a mission, the same thing. All these words and all the tools around it are just meaningless most of the time. So I wanted to come up with something which is really small because, as you know, I believe in cadences. So I wanted to have a small framework in front of which people can sit week by week by week and just discuss strategy on a very high level. So I came up with a framework that has 3 levels. The first one is markers. That defines your identity, who you want to be or who you are. I don't care. Like, if it defines who you want to be, it's dynamic. If it defines
so it's
who you
markers.
are,
it's not Marcus.
It's not Marcus. Yeah, there's really terrible jokes going on because it's so close to my name and I pronounce it really badly. So in German, it's much easier. It's Markierung. That's not close to my name. I didn't think about that thoroughly. Yeah. And for all the fans, it's actually a Luhmann system thinking reference. Anyways, but that's a joke. Yeah, and that's the level of stability you need. Like, you need to have that down, and it needs to stay stable, and actually you should protect it. So why I talk about identity is, like, if you think about companies or people like me, you do not change identity that often. Like, for example, you just received a child. That is probably identity changing over time. An event like that doesn't happen to you every month or something. So potentially you wouldn't change your identity every month. If you would change your identity every month, you wouldn't be very successful in any of those identities. So you need to stick to your tools and your identity for a certain time. So you need to have that level of stability. Apple changed their names, one of their most important markers, about once. They went from Apple Computers to Apple Inc. Because, computers, everything they're doing contains a computer, but it's not about computers anymore. That was an identity change. Don't do it often. But the environment changes often. So what are you doing? It's like you need a second level of things which are much more flexible, where you can, if this is me, how I try to achieve it, I need to experiment with stuff. And these are the options. In really huge companies, an option might be really slow moving as well. It might be something that you try out or work on for 3, 5, 10 years, whatever. A product line like we need to go into SUVs for a car company would be a very high level option, potentially with a preload time of 10 years, maybe in the fuzzy front end and what have you. So, but relative to who the company is, it's still fast moving.
It's still a car.
Yeah, right. So that's the second level. And then to realize an option, you need to have something really trivial, which is work. So that's the 3 levels. And all of these things are connected with each other. The cadences are built up would be to coordinate markers with options with work. So that one of them is kind of on the portfolio level, if you want. The other one is much higher up. And what I'm working on with companies is really establishing those cadences that potentially each week they talk about the connection between markers and options. They listen to the whole company each week and come up with there's friction between 2 of the options. And if it's still the right stuff, because here's the data coming, blah, 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 whatever. And what happens is that over time you build up social capital. And it's a little bit like, these mathematicians jokes where you just say 54. And it was like, ha, 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 54. You have a very high level of coding then in the discussions where you spontaneously can jump in on a very high level on these strategic discussions. And if you're on that high level, it's always easy for you to build up other habits on other levels that you can always communicate and make it really clear, which again is what happened at Mobile Day. So we were always, even just the product owner could always recite the strategy that matters for this part of the group right now. And that's what they did. No planning without reciting the strategy onto that level. So this is what we're doing in the world. This is what we're supposed to be. For this first half year, we chose the following option. In that option, our product is important because, and what really matters is those 3 features. And that's what we're working on the next 2 weeks. Do you get it? Yeah, sure, we get it. Oh, sense making, 9 to 5. I know why I'm here and all that stuff. And it like when you have figured it out and when you're so deep into it on a high level, it's really easy to always improvise that stuff. Then it's just natural. It's ubiquitous to the company. And that's really cool. That's what I try to achieve.
Have you written down those 3 levels in any white paper or book or anything that we could look up?
I think I'm lazy in that I have presentations about it, but I always promise people to write a book, but I never wrote even a chapter, I think. I don't think I have concise documentation. I could try to look something up and then, if I find it, I send it to you for the show notes or something. I have a ton of videos. I do webinars around that every couple of weeks, so people can, if they're interested, join into that. Also, those who are crazily interested in strategy can always give me a call, because I also do a 12-week blended training course where actually I'm not the point, but it's always with peers. And then after getting to know each other after 4 weeks, it's always ending up in them not wanting to listen to me that much anymore, but giving themselves side hooks and stuff. So they enjoy the weekly content, but the discussion they have for each other is much more important. So that's going on regularly. Yeah, but I'm really lazy in writing down the fundamentals. You're totally hitting a weak spot there.
Sorry, but I feel
cool.
I feel you on that point. I have a list of reading and writing, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
It's also a blind spot, because the fundamentals are always the blind spot because they're self-explaining to you. So you always forget about them. That's kind of the drama in companies as well.
It sounds self-explaining, but those are often the things that fall down at the end.
That's what I mean. It's only self-explaining to me, to nobody else. That's why it's a blind spot to me. Yeah.
So if people want to know a little bit more about your work, if people want to interact, what is the best way to reach out to you?
I think basically on LinkedIn is just a good spot. There's always a link up where you can DM me or book a coffee chat with me. I'm really totally open to any coffee chat. People coming to me always have a specific interest. That's cool. So nobody should hesitate ever. And the topics I deal with are always only going through communication anyways. I never did work with anybody who didn't talk with me before 3, 4 times, 5 times, 10 times, whatever. So it's always super specific, super contextual, super core to the company, That's also why I don't have references, because everything's under NDA anyways. And, nobody wants to talk about the details anytime. So it's always super confidential stuff that just needs a coffee chat as a first point of contact anyways.
All right. I will provide all the links below, all the contact details. So if people want to reach out to you, just open up the show notes and click on the links. Thank you so much for spending the past hour with me. Thank you guys for spending the past hour with us. And final question is, what type of genre do you wish your AI-generated song should be? I'm not sure if I will continue this for all the episodes that are upcoming, but for now I'm sticking to it.
I'm struggling, so I told you a little bit about my struggle. Normally I'm listening to jazz, but that's boring. And nobody likes jazz. So the question is, because I always say the way that I do strategy is a little bit dirty and messy by intent, it should be something dirty and messy. So there's you can have dirty and messy hip hop, metal, or electronics can also be messy. But maybe a good definition, maybe you're too young for that, I don't know. I think suicidal tendencies are really dynamic and messy. Maybe something in the style of the suicidal tendencies.
Suicidal tendencies?
Yeah, that's the real name. It comes from a time
band?
where bands were actually called suicidal tendencies or sick of it all.
And what type of genre is that? Is that a metal song?
It's kind of metal, but not really hardcore, super mega metal, but it's kind of cleaned up.
Mm-hmm.
The current bass player of Red Hot Chili Peppers actually originated from the suicidal tendencies. So Trujillo is his second name. So he became famous with suicidal tendencies first.
That is really old school then.
It is. I'm super old.
Not that old, to be fair.
Yeah, let's not talk about it.
All right. It was so good having you on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Benjamin. Thanks for everybody listening. And wherever we meet, let's approach and let's have a discussion.
Yeah, at least on LinkedIn. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Cool. See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
That's it. Thank you so much for tuning in. This podcast is part of my consultancy startup that runs by the same name. Whether it's applying AI, agile, adopting new technology, or exploring new markets, our analysis services help you to stay on track and deliver measurable results. Don't just trust your gut when it comes to organizing work. Trust your gut and the ones from your colleagues and data, of course. Within just a week, we're able to give you a comprehensive insight into what drives your needle forward. Hit us up. That's it. See you next week. Bye-bye.